Okay, so what I wanted to talk about today, while Francisco's getting the cameras working for us, does it need to be one of these things over here? Maybe. Is getting back to basics with our buyers and our sellers. Because I've noticed there was a whole thread over the weekend on WhatsApp about a situation with a apparently unscrupulous listing agent. And so I wanted to address that first and make sure that when we're working with other agents that we are, and I know all of you guys are, portraying ourselves as the professionals that we should be, right? We owe our clients that fiduciary relationship, but we also need to act in kind with our fellow agents. We want to be that agent that the list agent wants to push our offer through because they enjoy working with us so much. And I know some of you have had that experience. You've shared that with me. And so we had a situation over the weekend where, and not one of our agents, it was one of our agents trying to show her client a property, had an agent that was trying to write the offer instead of sending them back to their agent. And my understanding is that there may not be a BRE or a buyer's representation agreement in place. So, pop quiz. Why do you want a buyer's representation agreement in place?
To get paid.
I didn't hear the first part of what you said, but I know why we need an agreement in place so that people are loyal to you.
Yeah. So it's really important. We're going to talk about getting back to basics, okay? It's real. Oh, there we go. Now we can see everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Everybody know where to find the qualifying questions for the buyers and sellers in your PC toolkit? And then I will put them on the screen as well. We're going to go over that today. But first of all, let's talk about why it's important. Let's start with the buyer side. Why is it important that we do a buyer consultation with our buyers every single time?
And with getting an idea what they want, what they expect of us, you know.
That's definitely part of it. What
I would
else?
say first and foremost at the current time is for safety.
That's an excellent reason. That is also a very good reason. You listened to our mastermind a couple weeks ago and I was on a soapbox about that. For a good reason though, we've had some issues, so we want to make sure everybody's safe. Okay, so safety, getting to know what our clients need and want. Those are two. What else?
Find their motivation.
Absolutely, find their motivation. That's a big one. What else? Hey, Luke found us, yay. And he's not upside down. The rest of you, if you could turn your cameras on, that would be great. We like seeing faces. So we have needs and wants, safety, motivation. What else? There's a biggie that I haven't heard yet. A couple of them, actually.
What kind of buyer is it? Is it an A, B, or C? Are they ready? Not yet, or?
Yeah, that kind of goes in with motivation, right? And what else could it be linked to? A, B, or C? If it's a C buyer, what are they probably not have done yet? I didn't word that right, but what have they probably not done yet?
Get qualified, you're qualified.
Get qualified, pre-qualified. And in this market and any market right now, given safety among many other things, are we okay with just pre-qualification? No, what do we want?
Pre-approval.
Yes. And you guys speak up so that, okay, so that they can know that you're talking too. Okay. Yes, pre-approval. We don't want to waste our time, buyer's time, seller's time, and we need to know that they are legitimately good to go. And that partly comes from a safety issue that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, And if you missed that one, go on to the YouTube page. The link was put in WhatsApp, and I think it's also on our Facebook page. And watch that video, very important about safety. Some important reminders. Okay, so there's another biggie we haven't heard yet.
Do you want a contract signed?
Okay, yeah, we want to get that buyer's representation agreement signed. And one more thing at least. We want to set,
Expectation.
there you go. Now, and that's on both sides, right? We want to set expectations for what they can expect in the market and also what they can expect by working with us. Are you going to answer your phone at 10 o'clock at night if they call you with a question? No. And I'm glad I saw most head shaking no. And why are you smiling sheepishly, Emily?
Because all of us have done it at least once.
I'm sure everybody's done it at least once. When I was newer, I was also guilty of that. But what happens when you answer your phone at 10 o'clock at night once?
Then what's always happening?
We teach people how to treat us, right? So if you do it once, they're going to keep doing it. It's going to be really hard to break them of that. So the buyer consultation is where we're going to set those expectations. That you are going to give them 100%. You are going to be looking out for their best interests, and you're going to give them fabulous customer service. And just so you know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I won't be answering any texts or emails or phone calls after whatever time at night you decide, not 10 o'clock, not 9 o'clock, right? 6, 7 o'clock maybe. Maybe some of you do 8 o'clock. I won't complain about that. But remember, you want to live a life by design, not a life of chaos. If you have families, your families are important. Don't be answering your phone at the dinner table, okay? Let them know, when I started in this business, I didn't work on Sundays, and it was for the sole reason that there was one day a week my kids knew they had my full attention. I set that expectation at my buyer consultations and at my listing appointments. I never lost one client over it. As a matter of fact, they respected me more because I set boundaries. And I know it is a limiting belief in some of your heads that, oh, but if they need me on the week, I have to answer their phone or I might lose them. No, it's a limiting belief. It's an absolute limiting belief. I promise you, I have never lost a client over it. And I also promise you, if you ever do lose a client over it, good riddance. You don't want to work with those people. Seriously. They will be more headache than they're worth. Guaranteed. That's also how you can weed out who you want to work with and don't want to work with. Because remember, I know for those of you that are newer, you want to work with everybody, right? You want that business, but it's okay to say no sometimes if it doesn't work for you, okay? Okay, so let's pull up, everybody go into your PC toolkit. I'll do it here too and share the screen. Here we go. Give me a second. I want you to go into your PC toolkit and I want you to pull up the buyer pre-qualification questions. They're going to be in your script library, or it's called buyer lead sheet. Okay, let me share screen. So if you don't have a computer in front of you, you can still see it. All right, can everybody see that okay? Is that better? All righty. So this buyer lead sheet, what are some of the things when we start asking questions that we have to be mindful of? Because this is a quote script, right? Or a conversation starter. This is one of those things that's going to help you in that conversation. So what are some things when you start asking questions you need to be mindful of? Maybe, it's not a trick question, but I get why. So this is with anything that you're using, because many of you will look to these scripts or these conversation helpers to help you have conversations, right? But what happens is sometimes we get so tied to what's on the page, we don't realize the person we're talking to has already answered a certain question. Because one question led to them just talking. And in that talking, maybe they've answered 2 or 3 of these questions. Okay, so we want to be careful of that. Hey, how are you? Marisol's in the room now. Okay, so one important question, first one there. Has an agent taken you out to show you any properties? Why do you want to ask that question?
They may have signed a contract and not realized it, or forgot, or think they don't have to tell you.
Yeah.
A lot of reasons.
Yeah. And we want to absolutely make sure they haven't already signed with someone else, right? Or you can say, are you working with an agent already? Have you seen any homes with them? If yes, how's it going? If they have not signed a BRE with another agent, is it okay for you to work with them?
Yes.
It is, and you should be respectful and still ask some questions first, right? Because if it's going well and they're happy with their agent, just because they haven't signed doesn't mean we want to step on toes, right? Because how many of you have worked with a buyer that you did not get a BRE signed with? Be honest, okay? And would you want another agent trying to overstep that and talk them out of you and into them? Okay, so be mindful of that, right? We talked about that at the onset. Now, that being said, if things are not going well, ask some questions. Probe, right? Because sometimes it's not going well because there's misunderstanding. There were times during when we were having, 20 offers on one house, there were times when it wasn't going well to the buyer because, well, they're not showing me anything. They're not sending me any listings. Well, were there any listings to send them? Right? But if it had been 2 weeks, no listing sent and no communication to confirm there's no listing sent, well, that's a red flag, right? So we want to be careful that we don't step on toes. Okay. Is there anyone else buying the home with you? Why is that important?
Just have all the decision makers.
Yeah. Have all the decision makers. Does anybody else need to be pre-approved besides the person you're talking to? Okay. Who will be living in your home? Why is that different than the previous question?
Because they won't be the ones that you need to worry about signing paperwork, but yet it will help determine what kind of home they need.
Exactly. How long have you been looking for a home? Why is that a good question?
So you can know where they are at kind of in the process.
Yeah.
To know if they're serious.
Yeah. Where they're at in the process, if they're serious, we're getting to motivation, right? Because part of the reason we're asking these questions is to figure out that motivation. Are they A, B, C? Do we need to get an appointment now to show? Do we need to make sure they're with a lender now? Do we need to wait a while and nurture them and use our time wisely, right? I'm curious. Why are you moving?
Again, motivation.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'd just rather live at the ocean. Or, well, my husband just got a job transfer and he has to be there in 2 months. What's the difference there? Urgency, right? Hello, welcome. Okay. Are you renting now or do you own? So if they're renting, what's our next question?
Lease
What's your lease
or month?
Yeah.
timeline?
We want to find out, do they have to pay to break the lease? Are they able to, right? If they are not renting, but they own their home, what's the next obvious question?
Are you going to sell it?
Yeah. Do you need to sell it, right? Not everybody does. Some people want a second home, an investment home, whatever the case may be. So never assume, right? Never assume. And if the answer is yes, they need to sell the home, at that point, what's our next step?
We switch into the listing.
Switch, that's right. We kind of put this on hold and say, oh, well, that adds a few more questions that we need to talk about, right? And then pull out the pre-listing questionnaire, which we'll also go over. Okay, are you going to be paying cash or will you be getting a mortgage for the purchase of your home? Important information. Have you already been pre-approved by a lender? Now, this came up somewhere else in a conversation, I think it was on the Porter Ranch team meeting last week, about we really need to be careful when we're talking to people about pre-approvals. And we don't want to word things in a way that we assume what they're pre-approved for or not pre-approved for, or that they're pre-approved or not, right? So we always want to be asking the same questions to people. We never want to assume, okay? Because that could be a fair housing issue. So we want to be really careful about that. And then if they haven't been pre-approved, oh, well, I suggest we can refer them to a lender. Do you need a lender recommendation, right? We want to know what they're approved for. Now, let's say they're approved for $700,000. Okay, great. Are we going to assume that we're going to show them properties at $700,000?
No.
No. What should we be asking?
How much are you willing to pay for the house, or what's your budget?
That's right. What are you comfortable with?
And Jody, I always forget to ask how long ago they were pre-approved.
Good
And
question.
That has bitten me a couple of steps later. Finding that out, so I've learned from that.
And with that being brought up, Francisco, so what is our timeline? If they tell you a month ago, are we good? Probably.
It's within 3 months, but I always call the lender just to see where they are at.
Yes. General rule of thumb has been about, because pre-approvals are usually good for 90 days. But keep in mind, there was a period of time not long ago where in a 90-day stretch, we went from interest rates of 3% to 5.5%. That changes things drastically. So it's not just, it's good for 90 days, right? It depends on situations and what's happening. Now, there's been no real change in interest rates in that 90 days, then you're probably okay. But you might want to make sure that their circumstances haven't changed. Has anything changed since in your financial circumstances since you've been pre-approved? Good question to ask. Remember, these are basic questions, but depending on answers, the more questions you ask, the more information you're going to have and the better equipped you're going to be to help them. Okay. We did kind of skip if they are getting a mortgage and they've been pre-approved. Who are you working with? Important to know. Why is that an important question? Do we really care?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do we care?
To make things run smoothly. If it's not a local lender, then might run into some issues.
Yeah, some of Tulare County Market Center in particular, super difficult to get any offer accepted out there if it's not a local lender. Not all market centers are that way, but most prefer local lenders. What's the one lender you pretty much almost never want to work with? And I'm not looking for a name, I'm looking for a type of lender.
Online?
Online. So, and a lot of people start their process online. So we want to make sure it's not an online lender for a lot of reasons. One, it's going to be harder to get your offer accepted, right?
Yeah.
Two, so much of the time, and this is where asking these questions is important and setting expectations, right? That's part of the buyer consultation, because what happens a lot of times, if they get an online lender, the last couple days to close, what happens? Anybody had that experience?
Thank goodness, no.
Well, a lot of online lenders do. You've heard of low-end leaders, right? The grocery stores use them where they forever gave the rotisserie chickens for $4.99, so you go pick it up, and then while you're there, you're getting all kinds of other stuff you didn't plan to get. Okay, that's what online lenders do. they give this low-end leader rate that, yeah, someone somewhere will qualify for, but probably not your client or most clients, right? And so then when the disclosures come out and everything comes out in the wash, it's completely different. Or now they no longer qualify. So we had to be really, 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 really careful and educate your clients on that. Okay, so before we get away from that subject and go on to the next questions, any questions, thoughts so far? Okay, so what's next? What price are you comfortable with? We talked about that. Is there anyone else involved in the home buying decision? Where would this be important? There's two very specific answers I'm looking for. And you may not think about them, and that's okay, but there are two very specific things we need to be careful of.
When it comes to selecting the house, sometimes, yes, you are pre-approved, but there's instances where the mom has to be there every single time, or, you know, certain family members have to be there in order for them to make the decision. So it's not really their decision, it's like,
Yes, and that has happened on numerous occasions. And where you have to be really careful with that is if it's a young couple buying a house or a newly engaged couple buying a house. Lots of family members may be involved in this, particularly mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. If grandma or grandpa are giving a gift for down payment. So keep in mind, it's not always the person you're working with, but there's an even more important thing that can get yourself in trouble that you need to look for. And what would that be?
Signatures.
No, I'm talking about a type of buyer, a particular type of buyer you'd be working with that you have to be really careful if there's anybody else in the decision-making process.
young buyers.
The spouse.
Well, young buyer. Huh, Rick?
I was just gonna say if it's a trust or in probate.
Well, potentially, but that's not exactly what I'm looking for. So we said young buyer, what's the opposite of young?
Elderly.
Older. Oldish.
Nice cleanup there, Francisco. Okay, so an older buyer. There are older people out there buying a home, and there are their family members who are worried they're going to be taken advantage of, okay? So it's very important if you're working with an older client that you ask if there's anybody else that wants to be involved in this process. Is there anyone you'd like me to copy when you send emails? Things like that, because put their minds at ease. You're not trying to pull one over on their grandma, okay?
Super.
I'm actually dealing with a family like that. I'm dealing with a Spanish mom, and she wants her daughter involved. So
Yeah.
I'm having to CC her and everything.
Yeah. Well, very, very good. So I bring that up because it's not something that if you haven't done many transactions that we typically think about. And it's not something we think about until it happens to us.
Until you get a phone call or a message from that family.
Yes, and it has happened on many an occasion. So we want to bring that up. Okay, so next one. On a scale of 1 to 10, meaning 10, you want to buy as quickly as possible, and 1, you're not sure if you're even ready. How would you rate yourself? Why is that important?
How quick they're ready to move, get things going.
Yeah. We're really getting to the heart of the motivation. So if they are 1 to 7, I would say they're not very motivated. And we got to ask more questions. Okay, that's probably going to be your B and C buyers. If they are 8, 9, 10, these are your motivated buyers, right? And if they say 11, obviously they're very motivated. So if they're a 1 to 7, we need to ask those other questions. Okay, so you're not quite sure yet. What's it going to take to make you a 10? What circumstances would make it a 10? Right? And here's something to keep in mind. We all want business, right? And we're all salespeople to a degree. We are real estate salespeople, and yet I would argue, I don't want to be grouped in with the furniture sales people and the car sales people, right? Because they're pushy, and what do we do when we go to those places?
I'm just looking.
Yeah, and I'll say, can I have your card? Nice to meet you, thank you, can I have your card, please? I'll find you if I have a question. No, go away, right? I don't say the go away part, but anyway, I want to. So we're not that type of salespeople, right? We need to educate people on the market. There are a lot of people right now who don't think they should buy because interest rates just went up. And now they think prices are going to drop. Well, we know that's not going to happen, but they don't. So we have to educate them. So we need to be educators and helping them come to those conclusions. Not everybody's going to come to the conclusion that they're ready to buy right now. And if they are not there, we should not be pushing them. However, we should be nurturing them. Whether it takes 6 months, a year, 2 years, and of course we have command to help us with that, making sure that we're in touch with them regularly so they don't go somewhere else. Okay. When do you need to be in your new home? Another good motivating question, right? Oh, I need to be there yesterday. Oh, not till next year. My kids don't graduate from high school till next June. Motivation, right? And then, of course, once we're comfortable, we've asked all the questions that we want to ask, and we're confirming in our minds that they are a what buyer, do we set the appointment?
A buyer.
A buyer. Then we set the appointment. I'd love to help you buy a home. In order to find the perfect home, all we need to do is set an appointment. So I can help you get what you want. I have this time, this day and time, or this time, day and time. Which one works for you? Not does one of those work for you? Because what if they say no? Right? Which one works for you? What are you doing when you word it that way?
Get more of a definite response, like, you know, it's either this date or that day and it's set, like, they can't go
Yeah?
kind of.
There's only two options.
Yeah.
But what are you controlling?
Your time.
Yeah.
You're controlling your calendar, right? Remember I said we control our calendars, we live a life of design, not chaos. So now sometimes there's going to be the two choices you give them just really don't work for them. Okay, you can have a conversation around it. But more times than not, they'll fit into your schedule. Because here's what I know happens with a lot of you. You find out they have a job during the day. They probably do if they're buying a house, right? And so you assume they can't take any time off to meet with you. So you assume you have to work at night or on the weekend. Anybody done that? Probably, yeah. If you have to go to the doctor, does the doctor assume you have a job and will he work at 6 o'clock at night for you? No. So we're professionals too. Most people, if they're serious about buying a house, will work in your schedule. And if they can't, you can have a conversation around them and we can make exceptions as long as it's not the rule. As long as it's true. We've asked enough questions to find out this is a real thing. We don't just assume. Okay? Because we want to work in our schedules. And then, of course, we set the day and time. That's when we're going to have the full-on buyer consultation. That's when we're going to find out their needs and wants. We're going to set all the expectations about working together. We're going to set the expectations about the market. If they've not yet been pre-qualified by a lender, set this appointment for a couple days out and get them connected with the lender in the meantime. Worst case scenario, have the lender join you in your buyer consultation. Zoom them in if you have to. Do the application with them on your laptop. So all kinds of ways we can take control of the situation. Any questions, thoughts, comments, experiences you want to share, either with using or not using these when you should have?
Since I was late, this isn't a buyer's consultation, is it? This is like pre-buyer's consultation, so
Correct.
getting them, seeing if they're qualified for a consultation.
Yes, this is the pre-qualification questions that we're going to find out to that. Right before you came in, we talked a little bit about what happens at a buyer consultation. We didn't go into detail, but this is the pre-qualification questions. Because what's happening is we're going into a shifting market. We're in it, right? And it's not a massive shift, and yet it's enough of a shift. We've got to go back to basics. And here's what happens. People don't do this. Or what happens is you're really good at this, maybe half of this, like you'll ask 3 or 4 of these questions, but not all of them. Am I ringing a bell with anyone? I'm not calling anyone out. I'm saying I'm saying this because these are all things I've also in the past in early days been guilty of. It's just, it is what it is, right? So we've got to go back to basics. We've got to get good at this. This should be a non-negotiable. You shouldn't have an appointment in your calendar for a buyer consultation without having done this. Okay? And then here's the next mistake so many agents make. And I don't care if they've been in the business 20 days or 20 years. Here's the mistake most agents make. They go from this to showing property. And they skip the buyer consultation altogether. They skip the expectation conversation altogether. And then they get really frustrated when buyers are running them ragged and calling them at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, wanting to see this house this day, this house another day. And then wonder why they're living a life of chaos. We don't go from this to showing property. We go from this to buyer consultation, to getting the buyer's representation agreement signed, to then showing property. If there's a buyer's agreement representation signed and an unscrupulous listing agent tries to take them out from under you and write a contract, you can take that BRE to the broker. But if you don't have one, you don't have a leg to stand on. And whose fault is it? It's our fault when we don't sign the buyer's representation agreement. And we can be mad all day long and frustrated and vent. Oh my goodness, I just knew that I didn't get it signed because I was just sure they were going to be loyal to me. We had such a great meeting. Oh, we got along so great. We really connected. I'll get it signed when I show them the first. I'll get it signed when I write the offer. You'd be surprised everything I've heard. And then they get really upset and mad when the client writes with someone else. So we can give you the tools, but who's it up to use them? Yep. Okay, so let's flip the switch. And let's go to the seller. Also in the toolkit, and I'll put it up on the screen. Oops, what happened here? Okay, this is going to be pre-listing questionnaire. Okay. So great, you've met somebody that wants to sell their home. So you ask for a few minutes to ask some important questions before you meet. Okay, well, should I make that bigger? That's kind of small, huh? Oops, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. We got to be careful with the first question on here.
Skip it.
If they're your SOI, you probably don't want to ask them how they heard about you. The only reason I know that sounds funny, right? The only reason I bring that out is because sometimes if it's our first one, we get a little nervous and we tie ourselves to the page, right? So pay attention to that. Look at these before you meet with someone. Okay, how did you hear about me? Where are you moving? Why do we want to know that?
So if we could truly help them, I mean, they may be living out of the area, right?
And then how can we help them?
Referrals.
There you go. Doesn't matter where they're going, we can help them, right? So you want 25% of something, right? For doing nothing but sending a name? Yeah, definitely. And then maybe they can help. And if they're moving to the coast, if they're moving to LA, if they're moving to Ventura County, guess what? Tulare County from down south, which actually happens a lot. We got a lot of cash buyers coming from there to here. You guys refer to each other. It's one of the benefits of having all of you together. Great referral opportunities. Okay, what's motivating you to move there? Motivation question, right? That one's pretty obvious. There's a difference between, oh, I just really want to be by the coast. That's me. That's me, right? Versus, oh, my husband just got a job and we have to be there in 2 months. Very different motivators, okay? How soon do you have to be there? Oh, not till next year when my kids graduate from high school. Or my husband got that job and has to be there in 2 months. If we sell your home in the next 30 days, would that be a problem? A lot of agents don't like this question. Why is it important to ask anyway?
Because it could happen.
And it likely will happen, right? So what does that tell us about what we need to do?
What's their next step? Do they have a place to go? Or are we gonna be looking for another home too?
Exactly. Do they need reassurance that we're not going to let them be homeless?
Yes.
Do we have to put verbiage in our counter offers, right? That seller has to find replacement property? Or do we have to have a 60-day escrow or a 90-day escrow? Which, by the way, you guys all know how I feel about a certain number of days, right? We put definitive dates. It could be 60 days out, it could be 90 days out, but we pick a day in the middle of the week.
Oh, yeah.
That many days out. We don't do 60, 30, 90 days. Why? Let's take a side step here. Why for some of the newer ones? Who can help us? Why we want a definitive date on the contract and not 30, 60, 90 days for closing?
Because maybe someone thinks it's only business days, or they're not considering the weekends. I don't know, a date's a date.
Yeah, a date is a date, right? And so a lot of times we put 30 days on a contract and it takes 7 days to get it fully ratified because we've got counters, this, that, and the other. Now we're down to 23 days, right? Plus, if it falls on a Friday, or falls on a Saturday, technically it would close Friday. Some people would argue it's Monday. When we have a date, it's a date. Now, what dates or days of the week do you never want to try to close on?
Fridays.
Fridays or?
Mondays.
The end of the month or a holiday.
There you go, the end of the month or a holiday. So I like to pick a Wednesday. That gives you a couple of days to play with. If something goes wrong in the 11th hour, which often does, the funder's ready to hit the button and figures out they need one more document that you couldn't get in time to hit the button.
Yep.
And you don't want. Yeah. So if you have a couple days to add it in, nobody's upset when that happens. It's no big deal because at the buyer consultation or at the listing appointment, you've set the expectation. That's why you're picking that date, because that's probably going to happen. So they're prepared to close Friday and not move till the weekend, even though your date is Wednesday. Make sense? There's one time a year you never want to close on a Wednesday.
Thanksgiving.
There you go. That acts as a Friday. So let's be Monday on that week. Okay. All right. So back to this. So yeah, we need to know how to help our sellers best. So we need to know if that's going to cause a problem. If it causes a problem, it's not a bad thing, right? We just need to know how to work with it. That's why we need to ask this question. What would happen if your house didn't sell? This is another question agents are afraid to ask. Why would you be afraid to ask this question?
Because want to keep confidence.
Yeah, agents are
You're implying it's possible you can't sell it.
Yeah, that's what our limiting beliefs go to, right? But what's the real reason we're asking this question? And how might you want to word it if you have that limiting belief?
Well, knowing it could affect the listing price.
Mhm.
And I don't know how you'd word it though.
I know where you're going, right? So what would happen if circumstances beyond my control, your home didn't sell? Right? So that takes away your limiting belief. You have a seller that should list at 335 but wants to list at 360. Oh, I just came up with those numbers out of that.
Sure, Jody, sure.
That's an actual situation. Okay. So what would happen if your house didn't sell? Oh gosh, that'd be horrible because my husband's has to be at this new job, and then we have to be paying 2 house payments or rent and house payment. Okay, so what is that helping you to help them do?
Look at the larger picture and go back to, what's.
Honesty, how much is your house really worth?
Yeah.
Right, price.
Yeah, it's gonna help with price because right now we're not talking about price and we're asking that question, but when we get to price at the listing appointment and they want to overprice it substantially, we go back to their answer here to help them list their home properly. So that's why there's a reason for every one of these questions. These aren't just suggestions, right? There's a reason we ask these questions because they will help you overcome future potential objections. Okay? How much do you want to list your home for? Why do we want to ask that?
So you can get a ballpark of where they are at, like their mindset is.
Yeah. At this point, you probably haven't even done a CMA yet, right? Because you just found out they want to sell their house and you're asking these questions. But yeah, now we know where their head is at. How much do you owe on your property? Self-explanatory?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, of course, I'll be sending you some information via email. Would you mind taking a few minutes to review it before we meet? And then that's when you're going to send them the pre-listing packet that we've talked about several times. There's a sample in the PC toolkit. We'll be going over it again at some point. But that's where it's only 6-7 pages, not 30-something pages. I know Command gives you the option for like 32 or 3 pages. Don't do that. Nobody wants to look at that many pages. But this is basic information that tells them about the market, tells them about pricing the home properly, tells them about you, and a couple other things, tells them about staging, right? Staging meaning decluttering, depersonalizing, not hiring somebody to come in and do things. And so it will do the heavy lifting for your listing appointment. So that when you get to the listing appointment, all you have to do is tour the house, talk about price, and figure out when you're going to put it on the market. Okay? Any questions before we meet? And then, of course, confirming all the decision makers will be there and then setting the time. Again, I have this day and time or this day and time. Which one works for you? Okay. Any questions, thoughts, comments? So who is determined moving forward to use these questions in these situations, whether it be a buyer or a seller?
Yeah.
Yay, I like it. All the hands going up. I'm assuming all those I can't see are raising their hands.
Jody,
Uh-huh.
I was actually in a meeting with Brittany, and she talked about this, and I did this on my website, and I think it's a good thing to do. I feel like it is I put on our website the list, like the pre-listing and selling questions on my website so they can answer it if they want to answer some of those questions that way. I'm stepping on my tongue. I'm trying to get out what I'm trying to say.
I know what you're saying. So, do you have it set up where they can fill it in and send it to you, or just
Yes.
food for thought questions?
Where they can fill in the blanks. Like if we got in the drive and we put a questionnaire. Some of them you mark yes or no, and some you write out the answers, but they can fill those blanks in, and then you get the email so you can get most or all of those questions answered that way if they don't want to talk to you right away or I don't know. Is that a good idea or?
So I think that could be a good idea and maybe as a first step, but here's the danger in that, okay? It's a great idea if you follow up and you ask more questions. But if you're just using it for information and skipping over it and going straight to the listing appointment, then I don't think it's a good idea. Because what happened, well, I took them down. What happens when we ask them why they want to move somewhere? Or where is it that they want to move? And their answer leads to another question, right? And so we've got, the whole purpose of these questionnaires is to dig deep. It's to get to their motivation and find out how motivated they are. And it's also when we get to those sticking points, whether it's in the showing of a house, the writing of an offer, being realistic about what they're asking for, or on the seller side, being realistic about price, it's helping us overcome those objections. So if we simply have them fill out a form and we don't address the form, just like we would if we were in person or on Zoom asking questions, then I don't think it's a good idea. But as long as you're going to use that as like the base, so maybe you're saving 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting and you're getting into, okay, I looked over your answers and I have a few additional questions for you, then perfect.
So you could do something like, oh, I see that you said blah, blah, blah. Is that, and kind of elaborate on their answer?
Yes, I would never, ever take their answers at face value.
Okay.
Okay, for instance, let me give you a for instance, and man, if this is one of you that said this, I apologize. Okay, so I'm not naming any names, but
Better not be me, Jody.
but you guys have all got your form at one point. It asks you where you want to be a year from now, 3 years, 5 years from now. Most of you have received that. If you haven't yet, you will. Okay, and sometimes I'll get answers like, they'll say, I want to make $50,000, but by the end of the first year, they want to be closing 4 homes a month. What doesn't jive there? If they're closing 4 homes a month, you think they're going to make $50,000? Yeah?
Make more.
A lot more? A lot more, right? So my only point is sometimes I think when we answer a question, we may not always understand what's being asked, right? There's no right or wrong answers to any of those questions. We just may not understand what's being asked, so we may not be giving the answer that the person is looking for. They may have meant, I want to close 4 that year, and instead they said per month, right? But I don't know that unless I ask it.
You're focusing on mobile homes.
Yeah, and in Tulare County, that's about what, $30,000 a pop? Maybe 40? At least those of you on the coast that deal with mobile homes, you get up into the 100,000s. Anyway, but you see why I say that. So there could be, they may not be answering the way they would answer if you were asking the question. So as long as you're using that as your starting point and still asking questions, then that's great.
And Jody, I always feel like I should have asked more questions. Like in retrospect, even though I go through the questions on the form, and as they answer, more questions do come up. But always in a transaction, I'm like, wow, like I could have asked this more thoroughly or differently, maybe, to get better clarity every single time.
Yeah, but use those times as learning experiences. So for certain things, I wish I would have asked that. Add that to your repertoire of questions for the next time, right? So don't ever beat yourself up over what you didn't do, right? We're all learning. There's times, I've been doing this a lot of years, there's times I wished I'd asked more questions, or even if you guys, oh man, if I'd asked him this, maybe I could have helped them, we all do that. Use it as a learning experience. Don't beat yourself up over it for sure. Love the discussion today. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Those of you on Zoom? Anyone? You guys are quiet today up there in Zoom land. Nothing? Okay. Oh. All righty, well, it is 12:24, so if you don't have anything else, I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys have 6 minutes back of your day. Those of you in the room, please stay put for a second. I'm gonna have a question for you. Anyway, I'm super excited that we were able to do this in person and on Zoom. So everybody like being able to see a square with lots of people in it? All righty, guys. I look forward to seeing some of you at my 1 o'clock today. Brittany and Lori will see you at the others, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jody.
Bye.